Hello and welcome again to yet another episode of Page 3 here on News 9. We have promised you entertainment and we are back with that, serving you the latest this weekend as well. Without any further ado, let's begin. It's time for the Nostalgia Nuggets of the week, where we will be telling you the tragic tale of Parveen Babi. Parveen Babi, her name echoes through the corridors of Bollywood history, forever linked to unforgettable songs like Jawani Janeman and Raat Baki, and also films like Amar Akbar Anthony. Parveen was the embodiment of beauty, talent, and an undeniable aura that captured the world's attention. However, beneath the gloss, fame, fortune, and the dazzling lights of Bollywood, Parveen's life holds a deeply sorrowful tale of mental illness, isolation, and the heartbreaking end that remains largely untold even after so many years. Parveen Babi's rise to stardom was rapid, almost legendary. With a striking beauty and modern, bold outlook, she quickly differentiated herself from the other actresses of the time in the race. While the norm was to play docile, bold roles, Parveen took on fearless, independent women that spoke to the new, liberated spirit of the 70s and 80s. Alongside Amitabh Bachchan, she formed one of the most iconic duos in Bollywood, delivering hit after hit and creating a lasting on-screen chemistry that still remains unmatched. Her beauty and undeniable talent were not just celebrated in India but across the globe. In 1976, Parveen made history by becoming the first Bollywood actress to appear on the cover of Time magazine, cementing her place as an international sensation. Known for her chic, westernized style, she became a fashion icon who redefined beauty standards and pushed boundaries in both her professional as well as her personal life. She wore daring outfits, set trends, and was unapologetically bold, whether on screen or in her personal choices. Yet, with fame came intense scrutiny for her. Parveen's audacity, whether in her fashion sense or her relationships with men like Kabir Bedi, Danny Dengzopa, and Mahesh Bhatt, led to her becoming a subject of constant media gossip. But it wasn't just her relationships or style that caught attention. It was her mental health which would unravel in the public eye in the ways no one could ever have anticipated. As the 1980s unfolded, Parveen's life spiraled in a direction few could have foreseen. Diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, her reality became consumed by fear and delusion. Her behavior became erratic, and the woman who once ruled the screen slowly withdrew from the world. Once vibrant, she now lived in a world of paranoia, convinced that those closest to her, including her friends or colleagues, were in fact plotting against her. In one particularly public and disturbing incident also, Parveen Babi accused none other than Amitabh Bachchan of attempting to murder her, even filing a police complaint, a claim that was quickly dismissed as a product of her deteriorating mental state. Mahesh Bhatt, who had been a part of her life and had in fact also witnessed her struggle firsthand, shared several unsettling memories of their time together. He in fact recalled moments when Parveen would spiral into hallucinations, imagining threats in everyday situations. In one such episode, while driving with him, she suddenly claimed that a bomb was ticking in her car. In a panic, she jumped out of the moving vehicle, terrified of an explosion that never even existed. Sadly, these episodes became more frequent, reflecting just how far her paranoia has consumed her. As her mental health worsened, so did her personal relationships. Despite Bhatt's attempts to support her, the relationship ultimately ended, and Parveen chose to leave India in search of spiritual healing. But when she returned, she was no longer the bold and radiant woman the world once adored. She was frail, withdrawn, and haunted by her fears. Her paranoia grew so extreme that she refused to eat food prepared by anyone, believing it might be poison. She would only accept groceries after delivery person had left, further withdrawing into her own isolated world. The once celebrated actress now lived in a constant state of fear, her once glamorous life fading into the background of a quiet and lonely existence. On January 20th of 2005, Parveen Babi was found dead in her Mumbai apartment. She had not been seen for days, and neighbors grew concerned when she failed to collect her newspapers and milk. The authorities discovered her body 3 days later, with the official cause of death being multiple organ failure. But the real tragedy lay in the final years of her life. Years spent alone, surrounded by no one but her paranoia, the woman who had once dazzled the world, dazzled our screens. With her presence, had spent her final moments in isolation, her life a stark contrast to the fame she once enjoyed. Her funeral, in fact, was also a very quiet affair, attended only by a handful of close acquaintances. The glamorous star who once ruled Bollywood was now remembered as a forgotten figure, her tragic and overshadowing the brilliance she once brought to the silver screen. Parveen Babi's story is a tragic reminder of how mental illness can silently engulf even the most radiant of lives. Despite her immense talent and beauty, she could not escape the darkness that crept into her mind. Yet in remembering her, we also celebrate the strength and courage she displayed throughout her career. A woman who, despite the odds, dared to be just herself. Now it's time for Page 3's Popcorn Pick of the Week. We are suggesting you to watch Superboys of Malegaon. Well, some films go beyond entertainment, aren't they? They immerse you so deeply that you forget the world outside. Superboys of Malegaon is one such cinematic gem, a story of grit, passion and perseverance that makes it an absolute must-watch. Directed by Reema Karti, this masterpiece captures emotions not just through words but through expressions, especially the eyes. It paints a moving portrait of small-town dreams, struggles and the love for cinema that drives ordinary people to create something extraordinary. The film follows Nasir, being played by Adarsh Gaurav, a passionate filmmaker from Malegaon who initially finds success making spoofs of Bollywood classics but eventually aspires to tell original stories as well. However, success brings its own set of challenges. Biggest one being ego, fractured friendships and a bitter reality check. The film spans three distinct eras, 1997, 2006 and 2010, each brought to life through meticulous detailing, rich visuals and immersive storytelling. Karti masterfully captures the evolution of time through changing color palettes, the transformation of Malegaon's landscape and the deepening complexities of the character's life. The film is an emotional roller coaster, balancing humor and heartbreak effortlessly. One standout moment is Farokh, being played by Vineet Kumar Singh, returning to Malegaon after an unsuccessful stint in Mumbai only to face regret and helplessness in a silent yet powerful scene. Performances by Muskan Jaffrey and Manjari Pupala add depth, ensuring that every character leaves a lasting impact as well. Shashank Arora is also delivering yet another deeply nuanced performance of his life, making Shafiq a character you truly empathize with. Saqib Ayub makes his presence felt with commendable depth, and Anu Singh Duhan proves his potential as a rising star to watch out for. Authenticity is the film's biggest strength, isn't it? Natural performances, dialogues that linger and storytelling that feels profoundly real. Varun Grover's writing is sharp and evocative, with dialogues that hit home. A casual conversation about borrowing money for alcohol turns into a reflection on dignity, while a simple reassurance between friends carries the weight of years of loyalty. The cinematography and dialects add another layer of realism, making it easy to forget you're watching actors and not real people. Inspired by Faiza Khan's documentary Superman of Malegaon from year 2008, Karti and Zoya Akhtar mold the narrative into something fresh yet deeply rooted in reality. At its heart, this is a film about resilience, about defying the odds, believing in the impossible and finding hope in the most unexpected places. It is a celebration of cinema not just as an art form, but as a dream, a purpose and a lifeline. Superboys of Malegaon isn't just a film, ladies and gentlemen. It's an experience that stays with you long after the credits roll. A heartfelt, unmissable tribute to those who dare to dream. Watch it, feel it, and let it inspire you too. Well, now it's time for the entertainment wrap of the week. So here are the headlines. Actor John Ibrahim, in a recent interview with one of the media organizations, commented on heroes asking for 100 crore rupees per day and their stylists demanding 2 lakh rupees per day. The actor called it mental and added that it's already hurting the Hindi cinema. Farhan Akhtar gives confirmation about Dawn 3's release, said not dodging any questions, shoot to begin this year. Blackpink's Lisa makes history to be the first K-pop artist to perform at the Oscars. Speculations float around Govinda and wife Sunita's divorce after 37 years of marriage. No official statement from them yet. Some reports are suggesting that Eminem will perform in India for the first time ever as part of his highly anticipated world tour. No official announcement has been made by the rapper or event organizers at the moment. Sandeep Reddy Vanga in a recent interview claimed that a big production house rejected an actor because he acted in Kabir Singh. John Lithgow to play Albus Dumbledore in HBO's Harry Potter. Actor and YouTuber Prajakta Kohli has tied the knot with Rishank Khanal in a beautiful sunset ceremony, sharing the joyous moments with fans on Instagram. BTS's Kim Tae-young just dropped steamy pictures from his military enlistment, and the army is absolutely losing it over his transformation. Emilia Perez's star Carla Sofia Gascon is set to attend Oscars despite the controversy surrounding her social media posts from past over Muslims, George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. And last but not the least, it's time for Crispy Chats of the Week, where we have spoken to British-American musician Anoushka Shankar. Here's the chat. Anoushka, thank you so much for joining us here for the chat. You're looking lovely, by the way.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
So trilogy vision, huh? Anoushka, that's something really massive. You have described all of these 3 chapters of your trilogy as a journey through multiple geographies and personalities. But how did the idea of this trilogy come about?
I just had a sense 2 years ago that I wanted to tell a story in a different way. I wanted to experiment with how we make music, and I just thought it could be interesting to think in the way that a book does, of chapters that are distinct but eventually connect to tell a greater story. And I found for me that was quite creatively freeing, because I could allow the process to evolve over multiple releases. And so it's not that at the beginning I had to know what everything was. I could create the first chapter and allow that to inform the second. And it was just a different way of being creative that I really enjoyed.
That's really beautiful. Since you have touched upon telling the story through all of these chapters, how did you approach the storytelling process, and also discovering the wide musical landscape, specifically in India, because your chapter 3 is predominantly going to be about the country?
So when I say chapter 3 is about the country, it's not in any way like some kind of an exhaustive anthology of the music of the country. It's about my experience of music with the country. So it's still made, by a small quartet of musicians with 2 main collaborators. The music we made and wrote referencing our relationship with India. So it's more of a narrative in that sense. I set myself a couple of parameters when I was making the releases that helped inform how I was going to do it. So from the beginning, I said I was going to work with a different producer on each chapter so that it would have a distinct sound. It would bring something different out of me. I wanted to record each one in a different place so that would inform the experience. And I wanted to show up to each one with a blank slate as much as possible. So I wasn't pre-composing or pre-planning. I was just opening myself up to the creative process with that collaborator or collaborators. And so it was really an exercise in trust in the creative process and then just being open to see what will come. And so it was sort of scary. It was very exciting. It was very validating. And, by the time I made chapter 1, that sort of set the initial impetus of what things were about. So that informed chapter 2. And then, of course, both of them informed chapter 3. So that became a conclusion to whatever the first 2 were about.
So, Anoushka, if you could shed some light on, the kind of styles that you will be incorporating in this particular chapter. Can we see a lot of Goa trance being used in it? Because Goa is taking the center stage. I've seen the poster also.
So when I first came up with the idea of these 3 chapters, I was in Goa, and it's somewhere that's meant a lot to me for many years. And what I felt inspired to do was kind of bring back the flavor and the energy of a lot of the music I listened to when I was younger, even if it's not necessarily exactly that genre. It's about capturing that same feeling of abandonment and wildness or joy and energy. And so the music is still, the kind of music that I make, but I've always had all these different influences that kind of come into play. I'm not a fan of creating a pastiche of lots of different genres in a kind of cut and paste way. It's more about how you absorb them as an artist and what comes out authentically from there.
That's quite interesting. And you have also spoken about, how you have come across different artists and you have collaborated with them. Now, each mini album in this particular trilogy features a different producer, if I'm not wrong, right? What was it like working with Sarathi Korwar for chapter third, and how did his unique perspective shape the sound of this specific album?
So the initial collaborator for chapter 3 was actually Alam Khan, who is the great sarod player. And like me, he's the child of one of our great legends. So his father, Ustad Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, and my father have, they spanned the 20th century with their relationship, their collaborations. They studied under the same guru. So Alam and me playing together for the first time in all our years felt really significant and really meaningful as a symbol of coming back to the roots of where we come from. But we didn't want to do that in a way that people may expect. And so I did feel like it was important to have a third collaborator, producer on board who could help round out our sound. And Sarathi Korwar is an incredible Indian jazz musician living in the UK who is a dear friend of mine. He's also been part of my band for the last 2 years while I'm touring the chapters. So he felt like a perfect fit because he brings the percussive element and also the energy of his music style. So it was the three of us, it felt like, that really created the alchemy on this chapter.
And you have also mentioned experimenting with, looping and technology in chapter 3. Can you talk more about how, exactly you have integrated these techniques and how they have allowed you to push the boundaries of the sitar in new ways?
That's such a great question. Thank you. So my first non-classical album was Rise 20 years ago. And so ever since then, I've been looking at other ways to interpret my instrument or present my music. And so, in 2012, when I was touring Traveler, was the first time I had internal microphone systems built into the sitar to help change how we can play live. Then with Land of Gold was the first time I started using a pedal board setup, which is something usually guitarists use. And I started sitting up on a chair so I could keep my feet down and use pedals and use delays and reverbs and looping. So that's been a part of what I do since 2016. But the chapters, I feel like it was the first time that I've been doing that so long. It's also started influencing how I compose and how I write. So I really wanted to dig into that and think, I don't know if this makes sense to you, but as a melody instrument, with the sitar, you think in a very linear way, like in one line melody. And working in that setup helps me think in a more lateral way, that I can create soundscapes and layers, and it's a different way of composing and thinking, which, it changes how the music is written.
Interesting. Let's also speak a little bit about the raga influence. The track We Return to Love draws on Rag Manj Khamaj, if I'm not wrong, right? Famously played by, of course, your father and Alam Khan's father as well. Share, the personal significance of this particular rag for you and why it felt right for you to have it in this trilogy.
So, first off, just simply, it's one of my favorite ragas. It always has been. I love playing it. But when Alam and I were teenagers, the very first time we ever had dinner together, I told him that, and I said, if I could just play Manj Khamaj forever, I would, and I just get teary and it's so beautiful. And he teased me. He's like, what, you make yourself cry when you're playing? And I was like, well, I don't know, yeah. And so, it felt like a full circle. Our fathers played that raga together. It's something we talked about when we first met. It's something we both love. And it just felt like a beautiful way to end not just this chapter, but all the chapters. The whole thing ends with that feeling of coming back home to where you've come from and just acknowledging that's where it all began.
So the trilogy seems to explore both personal as well as the universal themes, right? How do you balance the emotional, the nostalgic aspects of your music with the need for it to resonate for a broader and wider level of listeners and viewers?
There's always a push-pull between the personal and the global for me. And, these chapters, the seed in chapter 1 was actually very, very personal, and it's not something I've spoken about, but it was about a personal pain, something someone I love very much is going through, and I can't help. And it's a very horrible feeling to go through. And it was that feeling of tenderness and helplessness, that kind of pain was what went into chapter 1, which is why I wanted the healing of chapter 2, by which time so many global events were then taking place that it started to feel like it was a global pain, where I thought, you know what, I wish the world could take itself away and reset and stop and reflect and move in a different direction. It would be so beautiful if it could. And so chapter 3 became almost like that utopian ideal of like, what if we could, what if we could do things differently? This is what it would be like.
So looking back at the kind of journey that you have had as an artist while creating this trilogy as well, Anoushka, have you evolved as an artist, do you think, both musically and of course personally through these 3 albums? How do you see the changes in you?
It's a great question, but it's hard to answer. I think sometimes those things are easier with hindsight, and it's still too close. I know that every creative project, every collaboration, every time I work is a growth experience, and there's something I gain from that interaction. Not least from the touring. We've been touring it for 2 years, so 2 years of interaction with humans in audiences across 4 continents. That's a huge experience, but I'll probably know in 5 years what it gave me and be able to articulate that better.
Okay, I'll wait for that answer then. In the future, question would be regarding something that how I perceive the name of the album would be Return to Light. It sounds very spiritual to me. It suggests a return to light and love to me. How does spirituality though plays a role in your music and the message that you want to convey through this trilogy?
I think spirituality is a very personal thing, but we all need to reach for something, some meaning or some hope. Like, where do we find hope? I think I would say it's about hope. Why would we move forward if it was dystopian? When things are horrible, when things are difficult, why take another step? Why try again? It's the audacity of daring to hope that it may be different that is what propels all of us to keep going, right? And so even when there isn't hope, we can sometimes give it to each other. We can reflect for each other. Look, I've been through what you're going through. Trust me, you'll get through it. I've been through it. And you can give people that faith that they can get through it. And it is that community, that collective hope that creates the fact that it's worth it, So the 3 titles, the first one is like Forever, For Now. Like, this has been going on since the beginning of time. Everyone's having an individual journey, but it's quite universal. Chapter 2 is How Dark It Is Before Dawn. So it's that reminder that no matter how dark it gets, night is always followed by morning. And chapter 3 is finally, yes, you're in the light.
Beautifully explained, Anoushka. And my last question to you would be that you've been part of the movement, to blend Indian classical music with contemporary vibe. What do you see as the future of this fusion though? And how do you, hope that your work will influence the next generation of artists in this line to blend such music that beautifully?
That's a tricky question for me. I don't see it so much as blending as representing. We're all a product of multiple aspects. So in my case, I grew up across 3 cultures and continents. I grew up in my home was a very ancient musical style, but played by a very innovative master. So the model was given to me that you can be a classicist and an experimentalist at the same time. And I just wanted to make music that fully represented all of me, the world as I see it. So I'm actually not a fan of kind of overly conceptual blending or mixing for the sake of it, because I think that comes from a very intellectual space. But anyone that's making music that's coming from their heart, from a sense of authenticity, emotional response to things, then whatever that genre is, whatever the style is, it's going to have that essence of truth in it, and that's the bit that matters, I think.
Well, with that, it's a wrap on this segment of Page 3 here on News 9. Do stay tuned. We'll come back next week. Bye-bye.